You are about to be involved in a most unusual motion picture experience. It deals fictionally with the hallucinogenic drug LSD. Today, the extensive use in black market production of this and other such mind-bending chemicals is of great concern to medical and civil authorities.
Hey, you know that last tab of acid I was saving? I dropped it.
You dropped acid? Far out.
Now someone produced a phonograph and put a record on the turntable. I listened with pleasure, but instrumental music, oddly enough, left me rather cold. Mozart's C minor piano concerto was interrupted after the first movement, and a recording of some madrigals by Gesualdo took its place.
Like remember those summer trips you take with your folks growing up? Remember those nightmare fucking excursions, you know? Yeah. Instead of doing that, why don't families stay home and trip together? Be a much better trip. The whole movies would be tons more fun. Just 20 minutes of someone's thumb.
What do you do for recreation?
Oh, the usual. Bowl, drive around, the occasional acid flashback.
Flashback number two. Inspiration. The night arrived. I was handed a small paper stamp and told to swallow it. Within 15 minutes, I began to feel a tension in my neck, like little gnomes grabbing onto my shoulders. I stood up and stared at the lava light for what felt like an hour, my brain a morass of rubber thoughts. Then I heard music blasting out of the stereo, and it had never sounded so full and tangible. It was denser and heavier than any music I'd ever heard, and I imagined myself wading through it like a river. I sat down at the piano, but all the white keys appeared like they were fused together into a single note. I tried to play anyway, but my mind was blank. I hit an A. Then I hit it again. Over and over again for the next half hour. It freaked me out. What if I couldn't play anymore? Later that night though, I started to write a country and western shuffle, and the next morning I began singing about girls, comparing the girls in California to those in other parts of America. By the summer of 1965, California Girls was a bona fide #1 hit.
The drug was administered in a drink of water given at the start of each day's exercise. 25 minutes later, the first effects of the drug became apparent. The men began to relax and to giggle. After 35 minutes, one of the radio operators had become incapable of using his set, and the efficiency of the rocket launcher team was also very impaired.
When lo, as they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed, and the piper advanced and the children followed. And when all were in to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance the whole of the way, and in after years, if you would blame his sadness, he was used to say, "It's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see," which the piper also promised me.
You see, son, the thumb is opposable. That's why we can use tools and live indoors. Speaking of indoors, you get the impression the walls are breathing? I do, Mom.
To get back to the warning that I've received, you may take it with however many grains of salt you wish, that the brown acid that is circulating around us is not specifically too good.
Flashback number 3. Casualty.
We formed Pink Floyd with Syd Barrett in 1965, and he was a principal songwriter, singer and guitarist, the most creative person we'd ever met. Syd had this quality like a candle that was about to be snuffed out at any time, an extraordinarily wonderful man. But he took loads of LSD, 3 to 4 trips every day, acid in the coffee every morning. I believe Syd was one of the earliest acid casualties, and he went mad on our first American tour in 1967, where his behaviour had become increasingly bizarre. By 1968, he didn't know where he was most of the time, and we were forced to replace him in the band. 7 years later, when we were recording Wish You Were Here in 1975, I walked into the studio at Abbey Road and I saw this big, bald guy sitting on the couch, about 16 stone, huge, bald, fat guy. I said to Roger, "Who is he?" And Roger said, "I don't know." Anyway, it took me a long time, and then suddenly I realised it was Syd. He came in when we were doing the vocals for Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which was basically about him. It was a huge shock, because I hadn't seen him for at least 6 years. He kept standing up and brushing his teeth, putting his toothbrush away and sitting down. Then at one point he stood up and said, "Right, when do I put my guitar on?" And of course he didn't have a guitar with him. And we said, "Sorry Syd, the guitar's all done."
Now there's a look in your eyes, like black holes in the sky.
For he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town and just at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers put forth a fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrows were brighter than peacocks here, and their dogs outran our fallow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings.
Hey, come on, baby, follow me, I'm the firefighter, follow me, I'm the firefighter.
10 minutes later, the attacking section had lost all sense of urgency. Almost immediately, the section commander tried to use a map to find the location of troop headquarters, and a prisoner's escort had to have the way pointed out to him, although it was in plain sight, 700 yards away over open country. 50 minutes after taking the drug, radio communication had become difficult, if not impossible, but the men are still capable of sustained physical effort.
Flashback number 4. Tragedy.
To Francie, permanent psychosis. To Kathy, permanent brain damage.
These were comrades whom I had. There are no better. They remain in my mind, and the enemy will never be forgiven. The enemy was their mistake in playing. They wanted to have a good time, but they were like children playing in the street. They could see one after another of them being run over, maimed, destroyed. But they continued to play anyway. If there was any sin, it was that these people wanted to keep on having a good time forever, and were punished for that. Let them all play again, in some other way, and let them be happy once more.
To Joanne, permanent brain damage. To Jerry, permanent psychosis and vascular damage.
think drugs have done some good things for us. I really do. And if you don't believe drugs have done good things for us, do me a favor. Go home tonight, take all your albums, all your tapes, and all your CDs and burn them. Because you know what? The musicians who made all that great music that's enhanced your lives throughout the years, real fucking high on drugs. Man, the Beatles were so high, they let Ringo sing a couple of times. Tell me they weren't partying. We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine. We all live in a, you know how fucking high they were when they wrote that? They had to pull Ringo off the ceiling with a rake to sing that fucking song.
These voices were a kind of bridge back to the human world. And yet, as I listened to the strange production of the Mad Prince's psychosis, it did not matter that he was all in bits. The whole was disorganized, but each fragment was in order, was representative of the highest order. But of course, it was dangerous. Suppose you couldn't get back out of the chaos. From here we jumped across a gulf of 3 centuries to Albanberg and the lyric suite. This was going to be hell.
This is the end. Beautiful friend. This is the end. My only
First I'm arrested, right? Best LSD I ever made, right down the drain. I figure this is it, man. 20 years in a can if I'm lucky. That was 1968. Next thing I know, I'm on Rikers Island. You ever been there, man? They say to me, if I come to Vietnam for 2 years, no action, mind you, just work in a lab, they'll drop all the charges and wipe the record clean. The next thing I know, I'm in Saigon. And I'm working in a top secret lab synthesizing mind-altering drugs.
Flashback number one. Discovery. Last Friday, April 16, 1943, I was forced to stop my work in the lab and go home, as I was seized by a peculiar restlessness associated with a sensation of mild dizziness. I lay down and sank into a kind of drunkenness, which was characterized by extreme activity of the imagination. As I lay in a dazed condition with my eyes closed, there surged upon me an uninterrupted stream of fantastic images of extraordinary plasticity and vividness, accompanied by an intense kaleidoscope-like play of colours. This condition gradually passed off after 2 hours. Later, I realised I must have accidentally intoxicated myself with the chemical I was working with at the lab, lysergic acid dithalamide, LSD 25.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
It's like we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death, son. It's only illusion that we are separate beings. In actuality, we are all one God is love, and love is all there is. And if that's all there is, there can be no opposite. Cool, Dad. I think that'd be such a neat trip, in a way, with your parents. I think it might be more of an eye-opener, perhaps a third eye opener.
But 1 hour and 10 minutes after taking the drug, with one man climbing a tree to feed the birds, the troop commander gave up, admitting that he could no longer control himself or his men. He himself then relapsed into laughter.
But as it turned out, the music actually sounded rather funny, dredged up from the personal subconscious. Agony succeeded 12-tone agony. Who cares what his feelings are, and why can't he pay attention to something else? Isn't he sorry for himself?